Hello and welcome back to Dicebreaker, where today we played Kingdomino Origins.
Oh, it's there.
I had it to hand like a true professional. We actually played this out at Essen Spiel 2021, the German board game convention. We have since returned, which is why we are sat in our respective homes. But Alex Meehan joining me to chat about this new Kingdomino game. Am I right in remembering, Alex Meehan, that you had not played a Kingdomino game before we played Origins at Spiel?
No, I had not experienced the Kingdomino.
So I have played Queendomino a lot. I absolutely love it. I'm familiar with Kingdomino as well. So hopefully you'll get a good kind of idea of someone completely new to the series and someone who has played a lot of the series. So as a general kind of briefer on what Kingdomino Origins actually is, for those who don't know, original Kingdomino, very simple game by Bruno Cathala. It is as it sounds. You are playing dominoes, kind of, but those dominoes are now squares of fantasy kingdoms. So they could be lakes, they could be fields, they could be forests, they could be deserts. And you are building them in a 5x5 grid around your starting castle. And as you play tiles from the central kind of row of dominoes, you have to make sure that they touch a matching side. So for instance, if you already have a tile down that has a desert square, if you then play a desert square, it has to touch that desert square. So you want to build out these regions of matching areas. And then you score in original Kingdomino. That's basically the game. You score by multiplying the number of connected squares you have by the number of crowns on all of the squares in that region. So if you had 3 crowns, so like crown, 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 and then you had 5 squares, you would get 15 points. Queendomino added quite a bit more complexity to that. I say quite a bit more. It's still not a particularly complicated game. Queendomino added the ability to build buildings, so you would have red squares, and then there was a central market board, and you could purchase buildings from that market board and add them, and they would give you bonus ways of scoring. And the way you would fund those buildings is you could also tax regions by placing a very diddly little knight on one of those regions, and that would tax it, give you the coins, and then you spend that on either building buildings in your own kingdom or burning down buildings from the market board so that your rivals could not get them. The other thing that Queendomino added was some of those buildings and certain squares would have towers on, and if you built the most towers, the queen would be kind of attracted to your realm, so she would come for a visit and she would give you points at the end as well. So it didn't add a lot of complexity, but it was a bit more complex than Kingdomino, which is very, very simple. And now we have Kingdomino Origins, which is kind of the third, I'm going to say third kind of like major Kingdomino game in the series, because there was an expansion that came out for Kingdomino. There was Kingdomino Duel, which was a roll and write game. And there was also Dragonmino, which was like an even more kind of kid-friendly version. But this is like very much another Kingdomino game, rather than like a spin-off or an expansion. So, the thing that is new in Kingdomino Origins is that it's kind of like a collection of 3 different modules. So there's one module called the Discovery module, which adds, I think, the most interesting part of this box, which is Volcanoes. So... The game is, the origins of the title kind of refers to this like prehistoric theming. So you're no longer in like a fantasy kingdom. You are like cave people, and there are like settlements, and instead of crowns, you now have fire, because that's how it was in prehistoric times.
As we all know.
Exactly.
Fire was the equivalent to crowns.
Instead of a crown, you would put fire on your head, and that's how
exactly.
you were the ruler.
As was the
For
style.
a very, very short time.
As was the style at the time.
Yes. So I think Volcanoes is the most interesting addition in this box, which is in what they call the Discover mode, which is kind of one of the 3 modules, but in some ways it's like the base game of this box. Because Volcano tiles you always include. And the main difference here is that whereas crowns were printed on tiles previously, and like I say, you would score for crowns times number of squares, here some of the fire is printed on squares on the tiles, but you can also place down a tile with a volcano to spit fire across your kingdom. So it's either one, two, or three volcanoes, and that will determine how far it flies and how many fire symbols there are on the token. But the kind of neat thing is that you decide which direction it flies. So it always flies a kind of a fixed amount, but it flies to the furthest like free square in that direction, as long as there is one. But because you can pick like diagonal or orthogonal directions, it means that you can plant a volcano and it can spit extra points into a region you've kind of already surrounded already. Yeah, so instead of being like, oh, well, I've surrounded that and now I've cut myself off and I can't add any more points. If you had a volcano, you can actually just like boop, fire over the top, which I think is like a really interesting kind of twist on the scoring system. It stood out for me as being like, okay, this is like an interesting way of, it's not really any more complex because you literally just put down a volcano, pick up the tile, and it tells you what it does, and then you spit it out. But I think it changes the way that you kind of approach putting down tiles. I don't know how you found it, like playing Kingdomino for the first time, just kind of the basic gameplay.
Yeah, there's a decent amount to kind of consider to start with. But then once you've gotten your head around, because obviously we played with all 3 modes that are included in the game. So there was a lot of kind of info we had to take in. But then after that, it's very, very straightforward. Even with all 3 modes, it's still an incredibly accessible game, which presumably is the point. Obviously I've not played the original one. And you said that Kingdomino is very, very bare bones in terms of and it sounds like it is, because the crowns and the kind of matching areas are the only real factors there. And I'm kind of glad that I played this one first, because I feel like Kingdomino might have been too straightforward.
Yeah, there's a point of contention in the Kingdomino community amongst players of Kingdomino and Queendomino. A lot of people prefer Kingdomino because it is very pure, it's very quick. It is, as you say, it is just here's crowns, here's your number of squares, times the 2 together, that's your score. I personally love Queendomino. I think that the extra buildings are a very good addition. I think it just gives it a little more depth that I think normal Kingdomino wouldn't have for me. I'll get on to where I think Kingdomino Origins sits in terms of preference. We were told, so Blue Entry publishes it, representative who was showing us through the games, kind of said that the publisher considers it to kind of be in between Kingdomino and Queendomino in terms of complexity.
It's not.
That is true to some degree.
It's not as complicated, apparently, as Queendomino, but it's more so than Kingdomino. I think the fire element I definitely enjoyed, because it added a strategic kind of aspect to it, where you had to both obviously fit the volcanoes where you could with a matching domino, but also where you could shoot fire into locations, your environments that would benefit most from having more fire to them, because obviously you can't even score an environment without fire in it, and having those volcanoes kind of allows you to reach those environments that otherwise might be blocked off. I really liked that bit, and it was random what volcano you would get. The smaller volcanoes would shoot further, but you would have less fire in them, whereas the large volcanoes is the opposite. So that adds another element to it. But the other modes, I think we were a little bit more mixed on.
Yeah, so I forget the second one. There's one called
Totems.
Tribes. Oh,
Just
Totems.
the Totems
That's it.
is the second one. Yeah.
So this, it kind of adds resources, which are like diddly little wooden pieces, which
they are adorable.
They are adorable. And you amassed a field of mammoths at one point, and you just had like this sprawling green area with mammoths on every square, which was very, very cute.
It didn't score anything.
No.
No. That area scored nothing, but I did keep the mammoths.
That's because you were too friendly,
nice.
Because you can have the volcano spit onto a space with resources on, but it destroys the resources on that space. So you favoured the mammoth staying alive, which, you know, I'm all for, but also it meant that those squares were not worth anything at the end.
Yeah, I just couldn't do it. I love them too much by my boofs.
Yeah, but the benefit of having so many mammoths was that you scored one of these totems. So the kind of base resources, like the totem mode, is very simple. Basically, there are set resources on certain tile squares. You place them on them when you draw the tiles in the middle. And then as you add them to your kingdom, I guess, even though it's prehistoric, as you add them to your grid, basically whoever's got the most of a certain resource gains the bonus
Totem.
scoring tile for the totem
Yeah,
for
and this
that
happens
resource.
during the game. It's not an end game
Yes.
thing, so it can be stolen or won by someone else who gets more resources than like another person.
Yeah, like we wrestled over the fish one a couple of times, I think.
Yeah.
But you had way more mammoths than I could ever compete
Yeah,
with.
you were never
And I
going to
think
get
I
the
had
mammoth
more
one.
flint than you were close to.
Yeah.
So we kind of had one each, and then we were wrestling over the fish. So like I think that's fine. Like it's pretty straightforward. It's not a particularly complex addition. It just adds another benefit. So that kind of like the volcano thing, it doesn't mean that if you have an area that scores nothing, like your mammoth field, it doesn't score nothing. It can actually contribute to a different way of scoring.
Yeah,
which I
but
think
not
is
nearly
nice.
as much because each resource
Yeah.
is only worth one. Like you're still never going to score as much as you would if you got fire into that region.
Yeah.
But then the resources kind of feed into the third mode.
Yeah, which is tribe mode. So this is, I think people who've played Queendomino will find this very familiar because it adds a board that is very similar to the building board in Queendomino. But instead of buildings, this time you pay for warriors. And
Not
instead
just
of using-
warriors, it's
Oh yeah, sorry. It's like
they're
multiple
different cave people. Yeah, so because warriors, there are warriors and then
You're
there are
right.
like cave people.
Fishers, and there was someone
Yeah.
who's just breathing fire.
Yeah. So you've got the cave people who kind of score points depending on what's around them. So I had like a fire breathing one, which if I put fire around them, they would score extra points for each fire that was kind of next to them. And then I also had a fish one, which did something similar. And there are others for other resources, but there are some also for other cave people. Whereas the warriors are like specifically, warriors need to be placed around them to score points.
Yeah, that's right. You build like a, I can't remember how they refer to it, but it's basically like an army.
Like a
race.
tribe,
So,
yeah,
so
like
yeah,
a
tribes,
yeah. And I believe there is a type of warrior that scores a bit more. There's some that score just one. I think there's like one which was described as an oath, I believe. A bit mean. That scored 3 for every warrior that was kind of next to them. So, and this was okay. I think this was like, I feel like this was our least favourite mode.
Yeah, so compared to the buildings in Queendomino, the benefit is that, like you say, you can kind of place these on any square because you want to locate them next to where your resources are. But I found that they were just kind of a bit less interesting
Yeah,
in
a
terms
lot
of what they added because it was relatively just like, oh yeah, if you surround these, you'll get some extra points.
Yeah.
And because they cost resources, so I think there are 4 face up and you can pay 2 different resources to buy any of those.
Yeah,
Or
or
there's a
you
face
could.
down stack and you can pay
Yeah.
one of each resource to look through and buy the one you want.
Yeah, that was crucial because it meant that you also reset the board, which I think was like the very important element because there were just cave people on the board that we just didn't want. They were useless to us. And so they just sat there and it was so expensive to kind of refresh that. I feel like they should have made it every single new round, let's call it. They should have refreshed every round or something, so then there would be more incentive for us to buy them, because the one of each different resource was so expensive because I didn't have any flint, in my kingdom. So I didn't want any flint because, it wasn't really something I was focusing on. So having that board be, reset with fresh cave people just wasn't really something that was worth it. But then it meant that I bought some of the ones that I was interested in, but the other ones we just weren't bothered by. So I feel like they should have maybe put in that, like a rule where you can reset it a bit easier.
Yeah, and it's worth saying, so the 2-player variant, because we were playing two-player, you use a 7x7 grid rather than 5x5 with 3 or 4 players. So we actually had more resources to have spare for these, but it felt like, because we were wrestling over the totems, neither of us really wanted to give up those resources, because that meant potentially giving an opportunity to the other person to come in and, you know, take that totem off us. So yeah, I never found that. I don't think I got any of the like the cave people.
You didn't get any of the cave people. I
was just focused on trying to use those resources for you know, other purposes.
Yeah, and just to note, I won.
Yes, you did win. Yes, it was a relatively close thing.
Mammoth Land succeeded.
But I find so my kind of thoughts on this are that I still think Kingdomino is a great game. Like, I really like the kind of core gameplay of it. I still think it's really good. I think that it's different enough to stand out, particularly from Kingdomino. I think if you played Kingdomino and you haven't played Queendomino, this is a good kind of step forward. It has a bit more variation. I think versus Queendomino, though, which is my preferred game of the series, this felt, because they're kind of modular, it felt a little less focused, and I found that particularly the resources, having to pull out tiles and then put resources on them, and there were 4 different resources, and then you kind of it just got a little bit fiddly in a way that Queendomino wasn't really.
Yeah, I must admit, I did occasionally knock my, you know, grid, and then that was like more of a disaster, because I had to find the right resources and put them on the right kind of tiles again. I feel like maybe that wouldn't be a problem in Queendomino. The thing is, I feel like these are very minor complaints. They are very minor complaints, because, like, I've not played any of the Kingdomino games apart from this one, but from what Matt said, it sounds like it's similar but different enough that it's a separate game worth, you know, playing besides, you know, one of the others. But I think because it's quite similar, we have to look for these minor issues where, yeah, I agree with Matt, it kind of felt like we were playing like a mismatch of a game, which I think is the point, because I think they want to provide people with as many options as possible, where there is an option, you know, that maybe people who are very new to gaming can play, and then there are bits that spice things up a bit more. Yeah, and I think I like the resources. I think the cave people, I think, isn't so successful.
Yeah, and it's odd because it feels like that should be the biggest addition in this box, because the others are kind of like the resources by themselves is a very simple thing. It's just you get the resources, and then whoever's got the most gets extra points. So maybe they thought the cave people was like an extra consideration.
Yeah,
but
maybe
at least for us, it never really.
Yeah, maybe they thought the fire wouldn't be quite enough to justify an entirely new game. Maybe they might have just been like, we want to make a new Kingdomino game. We want it to have this prehistoric theme. And they must have come up with the fire thing, which we both agree is the best part of this game. But then they might have looked at it and thought, this isn't enough, especially with Queendomino existing, and must have thought we need to add more to this.
Yeah, and it's worth saying, so Kingdomino and Queendomino, they are standalone games, but you can combine the two of them, so you can play with expanded grids with 3 or 4 players. I think, it goes up to 7x7 if you use both sets of Queen and Kingdomino tiles.
I doubt you can with this, yeah.
This doesn't interact with those other games at all, so this is completely standalone, and I feel in some ways that is a shame, because it would be stronger if these were almost like if this was a set of modular expansions for those other games. Because I feel like if you combined them with something like the Queendomino like buildings, it would just give it a little bit more and make it feel a little bit more interesting. But I feel as it is, it just feels a bit like lost in the mix between the two.
I feel like they could have easily kept with the fantasy theme, added the fire thing in a different form, fairy dust. Or something that spits out crowns, because I think that thing is what we really liked about the fire thing, is the fact that you can, like we said, you know, spread fire and kind of change how you're scoring. That I think you can be really clever with that. So they could have easily added that in a way that would fit with the theme of Queendomino and Kingdomino. And then the other modular bits with the resources and the cave people could have been, I don't know, merchants and bishops or whatever, a bit like Carcassonne or something. And just replace the mammoth with cows. And you could have easily made this fit better with the other two games, and you could play it with those two. But it seems that they had their heart set on this prehistoric theme. I must admit, when I first saw it, I was thinking, this is very bizarre, because it's just completely left field, because even Dragomino is more like attached to the Kingdomino series than Kingdomino Origins. I just don't quite know why they've gone. I feel like they were just like, we want to do a prehistoric game. I don't know why they've chosen Kingdomino for this.
The theming doesn't really do much for me. I think there are so many games out there that are like.
I mean, Paleo. Like, we had Paleo this year at Essen. And we were like, oh, look, there's another prehistoric theme.
Yeah, and like, obviously there are loads of fancy games out there, but I think because Kingdomino is so bright and colourful and its tiles are kind of full of little in-jokes, it doesn't feel like just another fancy game. It's quite a bright and vivid game.
The tile art was nice. I wasn't fond of the character art on the character tiles. I thought that looked very sort of almost clip arty, I think we said it looked like.
Yeah.
I love the little wooden resources are really cute and nice. I don't like the artwork on the front of the box either. I think it's a shame, considering that Kingdomino and Queendomino, the artwork is always very clean, isn't it? It's like, oh, here is a castle, here is like a kingdom with a castle on it. But obviously Dragomino in this game they seem to have opted for more, here are some characters, and because the front of Dragomino is like a bunch of dragons, which kind of makes more sense.
I'll hold this up to the camera. So the actual tiles are still quite colourful. Like
they look nice
on the table, like you say, but
I'm not a fan of that. It's just it just doesn't seem to fit very well. Like it's I think I've realised one thing Matt and I really share is a dislike for art styles that look like they've cobbled together different parts and aren't like, don't feel holistic. That really puts me off. I don't like it when different elements of a game look like they're from different games. I really don't like that.
Yeah, and it's surprising because, as far as I know, so Cyril Bouquet, who's the artist of Kingdomino Origins, I believe is the artist for Kingdomino and Queendomino. So it's, they just seem to have gone for quite a, just kind of a different take, particularly in the characters. But yeah, it didn't do a lot for me either. But I think the game itself, I like. I don't think I love it. I think it's kind of the crux of it is like, would I play this over Queendomino? Probably not, because I feel like Queendomino as a singular game is still more enjoyable than this with all the modules added in. And I think stripping out those modules kind of loses the point of the game, because then you're just left with the Volcanoes, which is the best part, but you're also missing the extra elements that I do like in Queendomino, like the buildings and the dragon and so on. So it's kind of a shame. I feel like there are some really good ideas in here, but they're not necessarily... and particularly because you can't integrate them into the rest of the series. You can't even take the best bits of this game and put it in the other games. So I feel like if people are coming to this series for the first time, I would still recommend Queendomino first, and then probably Kingdomino, and then maybe this.
Oh wow, you like this less than Kingdomino, okay.
Well, I think just because at some point I feel like, particularly the tribe mode with the cave people,
you can just ignore that though.
It's not exactly the same, but it's close enough to Queendomino where I feel like I feel like owning this and Queendomino would be too close, whereas I can see the benefit of owning King and Queen, particularly because they can then be combined.
Fair enough, yeah. Well, there you go. That's what we thought of Kingdomino Origins.
Yeah, which is out now. I believe it came out just shortly before Essen, so it is available widely. It's published by Blue Orange. It's designed by Bruno Cafalla. It's illustrated by Cyril Bouquet, as we mentioned. And yeah, like I say, kind of mixed, but on the whole, it's positive. I don't think it's a bad game.
We had fun.
Think that like that series has been strong so far. So I think this is like a slightly lesser entry, but it's still in a fantastic series. So hey, if you like Kingdomino and you want more Kingdomino, like, I don't think this is a bad choice to pick up. But that is Kingdomino Origins. To say thank you very much, Alex Meehan, for chatting about Kingdomino Origins, which we didn't play today, but we did play at Essen Spiel 2021. If you would like more thoughts and coverage from Essen Spiel, you can find it on Dicebreaker.com, our very lovely website. You can find it on this very YouTube channel, which is YouTube.
Subscribe
/Dicebreaker. Yes, you should subscribe. And if you sign up for our Dicebreaker Plus members program, you can get some behind the scenes looks at our time in Essen, where we were accompanied by Liv and Lodi from the video team as well, which was very good fun.
It was great, yeah.
It was very good. But for now, that's been our thoughts on Kingdomino Origins. Thank you very much, Alex Meehan. I have been Matt Jahres. Until we see you again, have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Bye.